Russell Wilson and the Pittsburgh Steelers could be a match made in heaven. All that and much more on today's episode of Locked On NFL.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome into another episode of Locked On NFL. We appreciate you very much for being here on another wonderful Friday, a fantastic Friday. You got myself, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Dola on your favorite social media, and the one, the only Tony Wiggins over at Shop Talking Wig. We appreciate you very much for being here with us for another episode of Locked On NFL. On today's episode, we're going to give you the whole flurry of signings, moves, everything that happened on Thursday, coming in to wrap up a busy week in the NFL ahead of free agency. We're going to take a look at a safety market that might be in trouble going into this offseason. And then, of course, Russell Wilson, the former Seattle Seahawks quarterback, the former Denver Broncos quarterback, expected to visit the Pittsburgh Steelers. Why that could be a match made in heaven. We appreciate you very much for making Locked On NFL your first listen of the day, every day, and for being an everydayer here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code Locked On for $20 off of your first purchase. So, Wig, the expectation here, according to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, is that Russell Wilson is set to visit the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that feels like a match that could really, really work.
Yeah, considering that Pittsburgh just needs some competency and some consistency at that spot. Now, folks will look at me and laugh and be like, we talking about the same Russell, the one that they're running out of Denver? No, I'm sort of talking about the dude that was in Seattle, because this is before they started letting Russ cook. It's play action. It's run the ball. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's throw the ball to the tight end. It's, that's what Pittsburgh wants to do. Pittsburgh wants to play defense, smash mouth, old school. People call it outdated offense with Arthur Smith. It's whatever. But him and Arthur Smith together probably have something to prove a little bit. And the other thing is, he doesn't have to go into a situation where he went into Denver. He went in like he was John Wayne, right? He rode in on his horse like he was the hero. Kissing babies and doing all of this stuff, trying to set the culture. Well, the culture is already set in Pittsburgh. They know exactly who they are. They know what they want to do. Every time I get a chance to say this, I bring it up. I'm 54 years old, almost 55, and they have had 3 coaches in my entire life. Yeah. They know who they are. That is the wildest. I don't even think it's a stat. It's just a fact. They know who they are, and you just got to figure out how you fit in instead of coming in there and being the savior of the whole thing. I think the running backs and Pat Fryermuth and guys like that are going to really, really benefit with Arthur Smith and the potential addition of Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I think that would be a good fit for him. I mean, first of all, look at Russell Wilson being able to go from Pete Carroll. I know he had the Nathaniel Hackett kind of hangover, but Pete Carroll to Sean Payton to potentially Mike Tomlin, that's a run of head coaches right there to spend your time with. And you're right. One of the things that made the Seattle Seahawks fit so good for Russ was the way that they sort of contained his game, right? And allowed him to be Russ, but didn't make it to where he had to play hero ball all the time. And he was a part of a stable organization with the Seattle Seahawks, which has had, the same head coach for a long time up until this offseason. Now you look at Mike Tomlin, who still has not had a losing season in Pittsburgh, despite the terrible quarterbacks that he's had to deal with over there as well, or the terrible quarterback play he's had to deal with over there post Big Ben. I think that the idea of a veteran quarterback that comes in with the caliber, talent, experience, and knowledge of Russell Wilson, working with some of the younger guys that are on this team, George Pickens at wide receiver, Najee Harris in the backfield. You mentioned Pat Fryermuth at tight end. That's a really good mix. And we've watched Russ turn guys like Will Dissly into big names, at tight end and everything, guys that you've never heard of since and didn't hear of before Russ was cooking with them, right? And so I think it's a good fit. Personally, I think I agree with you 100%. And the other part of this that I really like too, Wig, is that with the Mike Tomlin factor of it all, like you mentioned Russ having something to prove. You mentioned Arthur Smith having something to prove. I think Mike Tomlin might feel like he's got something to prove too, because every year it's been the question mark, is Mike Tomlin done, or should the Pittsburgh Steelers move on from Mike Tomlin? If he lands Russell Wilson, reboots this team with a veteran quarterback, even though they're not going to get Seattle Russell Wilson, if they can get some version of Russell Wilson that ends up being able to operate this offense, I think Mike Tomlin has an opportunity to prove something here too.
Yeah, he does. And did I mention that they only had three head coaches in my entire life?
Right.
I'll add to it. All three of them won Super Bowls. That's wild. Right. That's wild to even like imagine
100%.
Right. So and then I got to add this: the year they had to replace Cowher, the two finalists for the job ended up in the Super Bowl. It was Tomlin versus Wiesenhunt. It's crazy.
That's right.
They always seem to be able to get this right. But what Russ represents, and he's not this young whippersnapper. He's not this RPO dude.
Whippersnapper?
Yeah.
Whippersnapper? Really?
Yeah. Is that
we're saying whippersnapper in 2024?
Yeah. So I told you I'm 54. It's all good. It's all good. You know what I'm saying? I say stuff like that to keep them cursing because I know that's not what we do here on this company. So I bring up all these old Leave It to Beaver terms. You know what I'm saying? Dennis the Menace's father probably said, I bring that kind of stuff up. But speaking of old stuff, coaches in basketball and football love their quarterbacks and point guards to be people that they trust. Not necessarily the best player on the team, but the guy that I trust the most. And I think when you're Russell Wilson, a guy who 2 years ago I thought was a fringe Hall of Famer, there's a lot of trust with a guy who's won a Super Bowl. There's a lot of trust with a guy who's thrown 40 touchdowns in multiple seasons. There's a lot of trust there, even though he might not be what he used to be. It kind of reminds me back in the day when Jim Plunkett. Somebody asked me, like, quarterbacks that get drafted high and then flame out, they never go anywhere. And I was thinking about Jameis Winston, actually, your guy. I was like, somebody's going to give somebody a chance the way Baker Mayfield has a chance now. Mm-hmm. They're going to get a dude who used to be really, really good, kind of fell off. Then we forgot about him. And somebody's going to get a Jim Plunkett that's going to take him somewhere. And he's going to be 36, 37 years old and almost get like Jim Plunkett won like 2 Super Bowls after people forgot about him.
Yeah,
that's what
look at the guy that took over in Seattle after Russ. It was Geno Smith, and all of a sudden Geno Smith had like this big old rebound season, and then I know that it didn't last for very long, but that's like one of those examples of these guys that you can come back to and say, okay, we trust this guy. He's a veteran. He's been here. He's done it, and maybe that's enough to get your team where they need to be.
Rich Gannon, Brad Johnson. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Almost Joe Flacco last year. You see what I mean? That guy.
Yeah, the surprise of the century right there.
Yeah, it's like the dude that has forgotten more football in a fingernail that he cut off than any of us because that position requires that. I think it's a good look. As long as, they still have Kenny Pickett, a lot of people will think that, okay, this is a death knell for him. But no, it's a chance for him to sit back, take a deep breath, figure it out a little bit. And it also will provide Pittsburgh maybe a chance in the second round if Michael Penix falls. Mm-hmm. Now we can bring you in and we ain't got to play you right now, but we'll have our future. If we don't like Pickett, we'll have a guy that can bridge us for a couple of years while we're still trying to be competitive because Pittsburgh is not one of those teams that rebuilds. They just keep trying to, reload.
Keep retooling. Yeah,
that's right. So I never argue against stuff like this. And I'm surprised we haven't heard Russell Wilson's name mentioned with more teams.
Yeah, and
considering the salaries offset, Pittsburgh probably gonna give him like $20 in a bag of chips and make Denver have to pay. Yeah. Okay, so them chips cost him 99 cents, and we gave him $20. So we'll make it 21. That's $21 y'all ain't got to give him, Denver. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, at least give him a sandwich with French fries on it or something. It's Pittsburgh for heaven's sake. Like give him a little something. He ain't gonna eat that.
Permanente Brothers, ain't that's the sandwich.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
There you go.
Get him going. I love it. No, we'll see. I mean, I think that there's going to be more teams, of course, that he's already connected to. I think he's going to be a desired name this offseason. But we'll see what happens. But I think that Pittsburgh's a great landing spot for him. I won't be surprised if other teams end up entering the mix. Of course, not very often that you get a veteran quarterback like this guy or Kirk Cousins on the market like this. So might as well see where else you might be able to land. Speaking of guys on the market, there's a lot of safeties on the market, Wig, out of nowhere. So we're going to break this down. Are safeties in trouble again? We've seen this before. Let's see what it might look like here in 2024. We got that coming up for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On NFL, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On NFL is brought to you by our friends at Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k, you can still have an IRA. Robinhood is the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar that you contribute once you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood will be boosting every single dollar that you transfer from a retirement account to your Robinhood IRA with a 3% match. That's right. No cap on that 3% match as well. Robinhood Gold gets you the most out of your retirement thanks to an IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 of 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. The 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of your first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% match on transfers is subject to terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, registered broker dealer. All right, everybody, continuing on with this episode of Locked On NFL. Thanks again, as always, for making us your first listen of the day every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. There's a lot of safeties on the market, including some veterans that we're surprised to see let go. Could we be seeing a little bit of trouble when it comes to the safety position and contracts and contract value? We got that coming up for you here as we continue on. Don't forget to go and check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 YouTube stream, the first of its kind on YouTube. Also available on Amazon Fire products for free in the Amazon Fire Channels app as well. So go check them out today over at Locked On Sports Today to get all the latest on the biggest stories around the world of sports. So, Tony, we've got Justin Simmons from the Denver Broncos on the market. Kevin Byard, who the Philadelphia Eagles just traded for, on the market. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson headed to the market. We have so many of these big name free agents and many, many, many more. Are we seeing, again, because we saw this a couple of years ago, are we seeing a devaluing of the safety position going on across the NFL right now? Or is it just about veteran age, quote unquote, we'll call it?
What I think happened was, I had to turn my microphone back on, but what happened was, it's like a perfect storm. The perfect storm for me is guys got overpaid. They got overpaid because of the tight ends and the way the teams were. They needed people that could guard all of these tight ends, right? The Gronks, the Kelseys, and well, there ain't a whole bunch of those guys cleaning your clock every week, right? You know, the way that they're playing now, it's more to these airbacks. You got to be able to play in space. It helps if you can play the slot the way Brian Branch does and CJ Gardner-Johnson. They overpaid them a few years ago. So the guys that are getting cut now, they're doing it for salary reasons. Everybody admits that they can still play. It was about 12 years ago. I was on the field, and one of my buddies who's now coaching in Power 5, he was a scout for the Jaguars at the time, and he told me the hardest thing to find is a single high safety because they were playing. This is when Gus Bradley was the coach. So they were running the Seattle defense with Earl Thomas. And I soon found out after 5 or 6 years of them not being able to find that guy, Earl Thomases just don't walk around on the street. And Seattle probably ran that defense that way because of his unique ability. All right. So you had Earl Thomas. You've had a few other guys through the years. Ed Reed, of course, is the GOAT. Tyrann Mathieu. Everybody can't do that. So once teams stopped chasing that single high guy and then they went back to split safeties, it kind of made everything a dime a dozen again. So I think teams really feel like they can find a guy, third, fourth, fifth round, paying for cheap, and they don't have to keep paying some dude that's good but not great, paying him like he's an edge rusher or something. So I think it's just really the perfect storm, and all of these guys are on the market right now. It has a lot to do with the way these offenses are going also, and the way that they're playing. Everybody's trying to defend McVay and Shanahan, and you can't do that with a dude that's built like a cornerback but plays like a linebacker. You just can't.
Yep, absolutely, 100%. That's exactly where I am on this too. What we're seeing now is the ripple effect of the way that offenses are approaching the game and the way that defenses have been countering that. And in 5 or 6 years, these box safeties that can come down, crash, and play that nickel linebacker, that dime linebacker, they're going to be right back into a payday. This is going to continue to ebb and flow, I think, the safety market, just like the running back market does. And I think that the running back market is going to see an upswing here soon. Here's why. as you see more of these split safeties playing deep back, these two cover two systems and things like that, trying to take away the deep ball, trying to take away the Mahomes, trying to take away the Josh Allen, what's going to happen is that teams are going to start going out there with two backs in the backfield, get your lead blocker and your tailback out there, back to the old I formation, and they're going to start running it right up the gut over and over and over again, because that's basically what you're daring them to do. We're taking away the deep ball. We dare you to beat us with your run game. And then running backs are going to start popping off. And it might start as early as 2024, where we're going to see, the 1,000-yard rushers go soaring and all these other things again. Then if the NFL adds an 18th game, things get really, really tricky in terms of like balancing all that. But you're going to see the running backs end up taking the game back over because the boxes are light. And then because of that, the running backs are going to get paid. As the running backs get paid, then you're going to see the safeties becoming more important playing down in the box. They're going to start getting paid again. And then we're going to be right back on the other side of the swing. We're just going to see the ebb and the flow over and over and over again. We saw this already a couple of years ago. Guys like Kurt Coleman were getting big old multi-year contracts and everything. Now, Xavier McKinney can't find a spot. You know what I mean?
Mm-mm.
Xavier, or at least can't hang on to a spot. And he's exactly that type of safety. Darnell Savage, no interest in bringing him back, it feels like, over in Green Bay. Cameron Curl, Eddie Jackson, all these guys that are hitting the market all of a sudden. The Bills just moved on from both their guys, Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. I mean, you're seeing the ebb now, I guess you would say. And then now you're just waiting for it. It's all going to upswing again, I think, once the NFL kind of rebalances itself out. We see this, it feels like, all the time. And it just feels like more and more we're seeing it at linebacker, we're seeing it at running back, and we see it at safety, because those are the ones that are most impacted by sort of that flow that's going on in terms of how the game is being played.
I'm glad you brought linebacker up, because linebackers just don't exist anymore unless you're playing a 3-4. They just don't like that. That position, you either a rusher or you're off the ball linebacker, and it's you and another guy, and y'all got half the field. So I think I know who's going to change it, because he's already changed one thing. Nick Saban mentioned this. He said that they struggled against Michigan because Michigan huddled, because they got in a huddle. And when they broke the huddle, they were ready to run the play. Where Alabama's guys were used to no huddle, lining up, looking at it, turning, looking at the coach, getting the play line. So they struggle with the huddle. Doug Peterson mentioned it at the combine. He said,
yes, that's right.
Teams, you struggle with teams huddling. That gives them an advantage over the teams that don't huddle. Everybody's been going to 7-on-7, right? So if you get rid of Sam linebackers, you get rid of nose guards for the most part, you get rid of safeties, what are you going to do? Have a bunch of corners and weak side linebackers on the field and pass rushers? It just sounds like to me you ain't going to have nobody that can really thump and nobody that's over 300 pounds. It sounds like 7-on-7. The NFL takes more away from college than college takes from the NFL.
Yes,
we have to remember
that's always been the case. Yep, that has always indeed been the case. And I don't know, it's going to be interesting, because also we see like Drew Tranquill gets a linebacker. He ends up getting this big old contract, and it's all, we might watch the linebackers take an upswing here in terms of monetary value, but then where does that end up taking its dip when all of that changes again? It's going to be really interesting to watch. Those three positions in particular, running back, linebacker, safety, I think are the ones that are kind of the most volatile markets year in and year out. So we'll have to see exactly how it all pans out, but it's going to be really, really interesting to watch. And safety, of course, is already a big one. Meanwhile, you got teams like the team that I cover, the New Orleans Saints. They're doubling down. They're signing one of their guys, they're releasing another one, and things like that. So I don't know. It's always really, really interesting to see how it all pans out. But
watch this. I want to know how it affects Tyler Nubin. How does it affect the kids in the draft? There's two guys from Utah. I know there's a kid from Bullock, the kid from USC. I want to know how it affects them. If these teams go into the draft and all of these veteran guys are just waiting until after the draft to see where they can land, because a lot of people do that, especially when you're trying to go to a contender. I wonder if teams are going to be hesitant to pull the trigger on a young safety when they can look and turn and see 10 people on the name on the pro personnel board of guys with experience, especially those coaches that need to win right now, and they don't have time for players to get developed. If you're Buffalo and that window's closing, are you going to go get a rookie, or are you going to turn around and go bargain shopping and get a healthier version of Jordan Poyer for $3 or $4 million a year? That's the question. Does it hurt guys in the draft? Not only because the position is being devalued, but because it's so plentiful, teams will use their draft picks on something else.
Yep. Yeah, and then it's going to be interesting too. Like, what type of safety ends up being the draft darling? Do you want the away from the line of scrimmage safety, and then do we watch the box safeties fall down, or the versatile guys like a Brian Branch who can play in the slot, who became a much earlier pick last year? Could that be something we see again this year? I don't know. It's good. I don't know. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to see the way that the safety market plays out. But as of right now, the veteran guys look like they're in trouble, but let's start to see what happens when the money starts to roll in towards them. All right, coming up next, we're going to get you all caught up with a bunch of different moves, a flurry of moves happening here toward the end of the week as we're getting ready for free agency in the legal tampering period to start up on Monday. We'll get you caught up here as we continue on to wrap up today's episode of Locked On NFL, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. There's no better place to go when you need your tickets for your favorite events, whether you're booking months in advance or you're like me, booking minutes in advance. You can take all the guesswork out of buying those tickets with our friends over at Game Time. You can see views from the seats before you purchase them. There's a bunch of flash deals that go on all the time. And of course, they have their low price guarantee. There's just a ton to check out over at Game Time, whether you're looking for sports, whether you're looking for comedy, theater shows, wherever it is that you're looking for, they got you covered. So download the Game Time app today and take all the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code Locked On for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that is create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDON Locked On for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, y'all, wrapping up today's episode of Locked On NFL with a quick look at a bunch of moves, a flurry of moves going on around the NFL as we close out the week before legal tampering periods open up on Monday. So the first one that I want to start off with here, Wig, was the big news about the Bears coming to a 4-year, $76 million agreement with cornerback Jalen Johnson. This is a guy that had, asked for a trade before the trade deadline last year. Then there was talk about him potentially getting franchise tag. Now he settles around a $19 million per year deal. I've seen a lot of people talk about how, he could have gotten 19.8 if he would have taken, if he would have held out, or if he would have, made it complicated and gotten the franchise tag. But if I'm an NFL player and I have the option to get a 1-year, $19.8 million deal, or give myself 4 years of a contract, I think sometimes the longevity of the contract will outweigh the value of the franchise tag.
It does. And anybody that thinks that you should have just played on the tag, they haven't been around NFL players very much. NFL players want guaranteed money. They want cash.
Yep.
And they want actual value. Okay, how much I'm going to get at signing and how much am I guaranteed to make? That's it. That's all they care about. And it's not like the NBA, and they just want guaranteed money. Guys want to know that they're going to have their secure future, and especially a dude that wasn't a first round pick. You know what I'm saying? Right. You want that bread. You want it you want to have it in the bank, and you want some assurances. That's why people don't like playing on the franchise tag. He play on the franchise tag. That might be, what if he gets hurt next year? It's the uncertainty and the fear of the unknown. It goes away. He could still get hurt, but guess what? If he gets hurt, he got $60 million, and it's going to come in. And that's a hazard of the job. People just have to understand. Teams, unless even now with rookie scales, they don't pay you for what you're about to do. They don't pay you for what they think you might do. When you're a certain age, they don't pay you for what you have done. So when you get the leverage at that moment, you want all the money you can get, because the next time he's available, you know what? He's going to be 29, maybe 30.
Yep.
And he's going to look like Justin Simmons. You know what I'm saying? They're going to be saying, well, he's over the hill. So they're not going to pay him for what he has been in the past. Some teams are willing to not pay you for what they think you might do, but you're getting older. So now you got to deal with that. So when it's time for me to get the bread, I'm going to get the highest amount of guaranteed money I can. And I don't blame him.
Yeah. By the way, I can't wait to see where Justin Simmons ends up. But I'm just being honest. I can't wait to see where he ends up and how he plays. Yeah. Oh, Philly's a good one. All right. So you and I have a couple here that are close to us. The Saints extended, the New Orleans Saints extended safety Tyrann Mathieu, 2 years, $13 million. And then, of course, the Jacksonville Jaguars re-signed guard Ezra Cleveland, 2 years, $28.5 million. Let's start off with Ezra Cleveland. How does this signing impact the Jaguars, and why was it important to get this one done?
Do you see my face?
Yes.
So here's what here's what. To be honest, as soon as you brought up Ezra, I went, no, I like Ezra Cleveland, I like him. And he got victimized by me a little bit yesterday, but you really had to listen to the podcast. I like Ezra Cleveland. I don't like the fact that they're going to bring everybody back because they also restructured Brandon Sheriff. The Jaguars had the worst offensive line in the NFL. Everybody's coming back. And if you commit to them financially, that means you're not using a high draft pick to fix it. And if you use
doing the same thing, expecting different results, Wig, it doesn't work, man.
That's the definition of insanity, right? But that's Trent Baalke. The good thing for me is with the Locked On Jaguars, I've been warning people all year. It ain't gonna change, man. What you think gonna happen? The same thing's gonna happen. And now everybody, they want me to run for mayor now because it's like, you were right. I don't want to be right. I want to be wrong. I want them to do something different, but they don't because he has too big of an ego. They're gonna bring the whole line back. If y'all ain't done nothing else, I want y'all to go and look at the Jaguars offensive line on Twitter. You know what it look like? You ever seen National Geographic?
Oh,
you ever seen like a leopard who operates by himself? He'll kill something and he's always looking around while he's trying to choke the gazelle out. Because you know who's coming? About 12 hyenas, they're gonna come take that meat from him. And when they come up, he runs and they chase him off. That's what Trevor Lawrence looked like last year. The ball was the game, and the hyenas were the defense. It's the funniest thing on earth. They ought to put some bloopers music to it. It's the
Benny Hill.
You ain't never seen a dude running from so many people. The last time I saw that many people running from people, I watched the episode of Cops. I watched the episode of Cops.
That's exactly what I was about to say. I've seen it, but I don't like talking about it.
I'm telling you, man, it's crazy. So it's not just about him. It's just that there's no reset. They keep doing this over, and they bring back everybody they're familiar with. So good luck to them.
Yeah, good luck to him. We'll see how it all works out. For the Saints side of this, with the Tyrann Mathieu re-signing, I love this move for them. 2-year, $13 million. It reduces his salary here for 2024, which helps them out in their quest, their annual mecca to get under the salary cap and everything. So it helps them out there. And it also gets Tyrann Mathieu one step closer to retiring in his hometown, which he told us was one of his goals when he did his introductory press conference. And we were there for that, and him talking about, being able to potentially finish his career here and everything. The thing that he's focused on right now is to be able to continue to lead kind of the young guys. He's sort of the exemplary, example of what it is that the Saints want from their culture and from their players. And so doubling down and committing to Tyrann Mathieu for an extra year, I think is great. It's a 2-year extension, which includes this year. It just contracts through 2025. So we'll see. Maybe that will be the end for Tyrann Mathieu at that point, and what a career he's had. But as of right now, he'll do a couple more years here in New Orleans. All right, couple other moves real quick before we wrap it up, just to make sure we hit them. The Rams re-signed their offensive lineman on the interior, Kevin Dotson, 3 years, $48 million. We saw the Dolphins add tight end Jonnu Smith, and then we saw the Patriots sign offensive tackle Chua Okorafor. Out of those signings, for me, Wig, the one that stands out the most is tight end Jonnu Smith heading over to that Mike McDaniel wide zone system over in Miami. Any of these other moves stick out most to you, or is that the one for you too?
That's the one. I'm really confused by it, to be honest with you, because this is a real good draft for tight ends. Outside of Bowers, I really love that kid from Penn State, Theo Johnson.
Theo Johnson, man.
Yeah, I like Ben Simmons.
The choir there.
Yeah, man. I love those dudes, man. And I think you could draft a player if you're Miami all the way in the 4th round that can help you. They lack physicality offensively to me. And I don't know if he's going to add it because he's a pass catcher. He's like
speed.
Yeah. So at some point you can lead too much with speed. Sort of like Don Nelson's basketball teams always shot 3-pointers. And I think sometimes you can lead too much with that thing that makes you who you are. And I think Miami, they're running from the grind. The grind is being able to push people. So they're just going to keep getting people they can throw the ball to because they're running from what they can't do.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's an interesting one. We'll see. I think Atlanta didn't get the most out of Jonnu Smith because all they did was ask him to block, and that ain't Jonnu Smith's game at all, and everything. So I'll be interested to see a little bit more about how he maybe impacts the offense from a receiving production standpoint, and then maybe they dip into the draft to find one of those more all around guys, the later guys like a Tip Ryman or something like that. They can come in and kind of be that duo. He can go out there and catch some passes for you, but also be a blocker. So I'm interested to see how it all works out, but. I agree with you. It's a really, really good tight end draft class. You want to hear more about that tight end draft class? Make sure you go and check out the homies Damian Parsons as well as Keith Sanchez over at Locked On NFL Draft. And then, of course, Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino over at Locked On NFL Scouting. Tony, always a pleasure to be able to kick it with you, man. If y'all want more from Wig, make sure you check them out at Shop Talk and Wig on your favorite social media. I am Ross Jackson at Ross Jackson Nola. We appreciate you being here and making us, again, your first listen of the day and being an everydayer here on Locked On NFL. We'll see you here next week as we return on a beautiful Monday as legal tampering across the NFL begins. So it's going to be a ton of fun. We appreciate you very much. We'll see you here again real soon here on the Locked On NFL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.